My name is Madison Hayes, and at 24, I've already experienced the kind of betrayal most people never face in a lifetime. 3 years ago, my parents and brother orchestrated my expulsion from Princeton University, destroying my full scholarship, pristine reputation, and medical career dreams. They watched me collapse into nothing, homeless and broken. Now, as CEO of my own healthcare tech company, they're begging to be part of my life again. They need me. Before I share how I gave my family a lesson they'll never forget, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button if family betrayal stories resonate with you. Growing up in Westchester County, New York, I was always the gifted child. My parents, Robert and Diana Hayes, presented themselves as the picture-perfect support system for their academically talented daughter. My father worked as a financial advisor at a prestigious firm, while my mother ran a successful interior design business. From the outside, we were the enviable American family with our beautiful colonial home, summer vacations in Martha's Vineyard, and my impressive academic record. Madison has always been special, my mother would tell her friends at charity fundraisers, squeezing my shoulder just a little too hard. She gets straight A's without even trying. That wasn't true, of course. I studied relentlessly, often until 2 or 3 in the morning, driven by both my natural curiosity and the impossibly high expectations my parents had set. Nothing less than perfection was acceptable in the Hayes household. My brother Noah was 2 years older and attended Cornell University, studying business administration. We seemed close during childhood, sharing inside jokes and defending each other from neighborhood bullies. But something shifted when I began winning national science competitions in high school, while Noah struggled to maintain a B average. Another trophy for the golden child, he'd mutter whenever I brought home an award, his smile tight and eyes cold. I'd brush it off, attributing his comments to normal sibling rivalry rather than the deep-seated resentment that was actually brewing. When my acceptance letter to Princeton arrived along with a full scholarship to study molecular biology, my parents hosted an elaborate dinner party. 30 of their closest friends came to celebrate, though in retrospect, the event was more about their status as parents of a Princeton scholar than my achievement. We always knew Madison would achieve greatness, my father announced during his toast, champagne glass glittering under our dining room chandelier. Her success reflects the values we've instilled in her. What no one at that dinner knew was how my mother had criticized my essay for hours before I submitted it, or how my father had questioned whether Princeton was worth it when Yale had been his preference. Their pride was conditional, always, tainted with control. During my first 2 years at Princeton, I thrived. My passion for biomedical research caught the attention of Dr. Jonathan Miller, a pioneering researcher in genetic therapy applications. By my junior year, I was working as his research assistant, focusing on an innovative approach to treating rare genetic disorders. Your intuitive understanding of these complex pathways is exceptional, Madison, Dr. Miller told me after I'd identified a potential new delivery mechanism for gene therapy. You have the mind of a true researcher. My dream was to complete medical school and specialize in genetic medicine, developing treatments for children with life-threatening genetic conditions. I envisioned a future where I could transform theoretical research into practical treatments, saving lives that would otherwise be lost to inherited diseases. When I called home with news of my success in the lab, my mother's response was tepid. "That's nice, dear. But remember, research positions don't pay nearly as well as private practice. Noah just got an internship at Goldman Sachs." Noah had become my parents' focus after his academic struggles in sophomore year. They hired tutors, made connections for internships, and invested significantly in his success after he nearly failed out. Meanwhile, they treated my achievements as expected, unworthy of special attention. During winter break of my junior year, I noticed small incidents that should have been warning signs. My application for a prestigious summer program mysteriously disappeared from my father's home office where I'd left it for mailing. My research notes were rearranged on my desk. My laptop crashed, losing a week's worth of work, even though I distinctly remembered saving backups. "You're probably just stressed and forgetful," my mother said dismissively when I mentioned these occurrences. "You always were in your own little world." Then came the announcement that would unknowingly set everything in motion. Dr. Miller recommended me for an exclusive research opportunity at Oxford University, a 6-month program that would allow me to work alongside world leaders in genetic medicine and potentially co-author a groundbreaking paper. "This could define your career," Dr. Miller explained. "Opportunities like this come once in a lifetime." I was ecstatic. This was validation of everything I'd worked for, a stepping stone to my dreams, and proof that I was on the right path. Little did I know, sharing this news with my family would trigger a catastrophic chain of events that would ultimately destroy everything I'd built. The night before returning to Princeton after winter break, I shared my exciting news at dinner. My father's fork paused midway to his mouth. My mother's smile froze. Noah choked slightly on his water. "Oxford? England?" my father asked carefully. "That seems rather extreme for a summer program." I explained enthusiastically about the opportunity, the connections I'd make, and the potential publication. I was too caught up in my excitement to notice the shadow that passed between my parents, or the calculating look in Noah's eyes. That moment was the beginning of the end of my academic career, though I wouldn't understand that until it was far too late. "England is so far away," my mother said the next morning as she helped me pack. Her voice had that syrupy quality she used when trying to manipulate a situation. "And their medical standards are different from American practices. This might actually hurt your applications to American medical schools." I was surprised by her negativity but brushed it off. "Dr. Miller says it's one of the most prestigious programs in the world. The connections alone would be invaluable." "Jonathan Miller isn't family," my father interjected, appearing at my bedroom door. "He doesn't have your best interests at heart like we do." This was the beginning of a subtle campaign to undermine my confidence about Oxford. Noah joined in later that day, casually mentioning a news article about funding cuts to international research programs. "Would hate to see you stranded in England when the money runs out," he said with feigned concern. "Plus, Victoria Chen turned down Oxford last year, and she just got accepted to Harvard Medical early admission. Victoria was my academic rival since freshman year. We'd competed for the same research position with Dr. Miller, and I'd gotten it. The mention of her name was clearly meant to trigger my competitive instinct. If Victoria had rejected Oxford, maybe I should too. But I remained firm. This was my dream, and I wasn't going to let their doubts cloud my judgment. I completed the application that night, detailing my research experience, and including letters of recommendation from Dr. Miller and 2 other professors. The next morning, I couldn't find the application packet anywhere in my room. "Mom, have you seen my Oxford application? It was on my desk last night." She didn't look up from her coffee. "I haven't touched anything in your room, Madison. You probably misplaced it." I tore apart my suitcases, checked under furniture, and even searched through the trash. Nothing. With just hours before my train back to campus, I made a desperate decision. I would recreate the entire application from memory. For 6 hours straight, I rewrote my personal statement, recontacted my professors for new copies of recommendation letters, and compiled my research abstract again. My father repeatedly suggested I take this as a sign that Oxford wasn't meant to be, but I refused to give up. "I'm concerned about your obsessive behavior, Madison," he said, watching me frantically type. "This isn't healthy." I managed to complete a new application just in time to make my train. As I rushed out the door, I caught a glimpse of something strange. My mother closing my laptop, which I hadn't been using. Why was she on my computer? Back at Princeton, I discovered that someone had accessed my email account during the break. Several messages from Dr. Miller and the Oxford program coordinator had been marked as read, though I hadn't seen them. A cold feeling settled in my stomach as I realized someone had been monitoring my communications. That night, I received an email from home. "Left your Oxford application on the hall table. Found it after you left. We'll mail it tomorrow. Love. Mom. The timing was suspicious. If they'd found it, why not call me immediately? I called home and my father answered. Dad, did you or Mom look through my emails while I was home? A pause. What are you talking about, Madison? My email shows. It was accessed multiple times from our home network while I was there, but not by me. You're being paranoid, he said sharply. Why would we care about your emails? Your mother probably used your laptop by mistake. But it wasn't just emails. When I checked my research notes, I found subtle discrepancies. Data points slightly, altered reference citations changed. These were specific details only someone with scientific knowledge would target. Noah, with his undergrad biology courses, would have that knowledge. When I called him to ask, his response was immediate and defensive. Are you accusing me of sabotage? That's insane, Madison. You're my sister. Maybe you're working too hard and making mistakes. The gaslighting was so effective that I actually scheduled an appointment with the student health center, wondering if stress was affecting my memory. The doctor found nothing wrong and suggested I change my passwords and secure my documents better. I took that advice to heart. I changed every password, started using encrypted cloud storage, and kept my research notes with me at all times. I even set up a simple trap, a document labeled Oxford Final Application, containing slightly incorrect information, saved prominently on my desktop. 2 days later, I checked the document's access history and found it had been viewed remotely from an unrecognized IP address. Someone was definitely spying on my work. Despite all this interference, 3 weeks later, I received the news. I'd been accepted to the Oxford program. The acceptance email arrived while I was in lab, and I literally screamed with joy, causing Dr. Miller to rush over from his office. You earned this, he said, giving me a rare hug. Oxford is getting one of Princeton's finest. I was ecstatic, but also nervous about telling my family. I decided to call rather than email, wanting to hear their real-time reaction. That's wonderful, my mother said after a long pause. Your father and I will need to discuss the financial aspects. The program covers all expenses, Mom. I already told you that. There are always hidden costs, Madison. And have you considered what this means for your graduation timeline? You might fall behind. This was the first mention of potential delays. In graduation, though the program was specifically designed to provide academic credit, I explained this again, growing increasingly frustrated. We just want what's best for you, my father said, taking the phone. Oxford is so far away. If something goes wrong, we won't be able to help you. Their lack of enthusiasm hurt, but I was determined. I'm going, I said firmly. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. What I didn't know then was that my Declaration of Independence had sealed my fate. My family had moved from subtle undermining to active sabotage. While I prepared for Oxford, secure in the belief that I'd overcome their interference, they were planning something far more devastating. The next weekend, Noah surprised me with a visit to campus. Can't I check in on my brilliant sister? He said when I asked about the unexpected trip. Plus, I wanted to see this famous lab of yours. I proudly showed him my workspace, introduced him to fellow researchers, and even to Dr. Miller briefly. What I didn't notice was Noah carefully observing my login procedures, the location of my physical research notes, and the names of colleagues who might have access to my work. I was still blind to the true nature of my family's betrayal. I mistook their interference for overprotectiveness, their sabotage for accidents, and their manipulation for concern. That naivety would cost me everything. 1 month before my Oxford program was to begin, I received an unexpected opportunity. Dr. Miller asked me to prepare a comprehensive presentation on our recent research findings for the university's annual Molecular Innovation Symposium. This prestigious event would be attended by faculty, graduate students, and even representatives from pharmaceutical companies and research foundations. This is a vote of confidence in your work, Madison, Dr. Miller explained. It's unusual for an undergraduate to present, but your contributions to this project have been exceptional. I was thrilled and immediately began organizing my presentation. This would be the perfect capstone to my Princeton experience before heading to Oxford. The symposium was scheduled for May 15th, giving me 3 weeks to prepare while finishing final exams. What I couldn't see was the frantic activity happening behind the scenes. My parents had moved beyond passive interference to active conspiracy after realizing their subtle tactics hadn't deterred me from Oxford. The day after I shared news of my upcoming presentation, my parents invited Victoria Chen's family to dinner. The Chens were puzzled by the sudden invitation. Our families had met at university events but weren't particularly close. Noah, home for the weekend, joined the dinner and steered the conversation toward academic competition. "Madison and Victoria have always been neck and neck," he said casually over dessert. "It must be difficult knowing Madison got the research position you wanted, Victoria." Victoria, always composed, merely smiled. "We each have our own paths. I'm quite happy with my research placement in Dr. Taylor's quantum biology lab." What no one at the table knew was that Noah had already begun laying groundwork for their plan. He'd accidentally encountered Victoria on campus during his visit and manipulated her into discussing her research methods in detail, recording their conversation on his phone. He now had examples of her specific academic language and approach, material, that could be used to frame me. After the Chens left, my parents and Noah held a private meeting in my father's study. "Madison has become too independent," my father said, pacing the room. "This Oxford program would take her completely out of our sphere of influence. If she establishes connections internationally, she'll never come back to the path we've planned." My mother nodded. "She's always been stubborn. Even as a child, she insisted on making her own decisions rather than accepting our guidance." "She's ungrateful," Noah added. "Do you know how many students would kill for the advantages she's had? And she acts like she's done it all herself." They decided that night that more direct action was necessary. My academic reputation was my most prized possession. It was also my greatest vulnerability. Noah, with his business education, proposed a 3-part plan: access my research, insert plagiarized material, and ensure the plagiarism was discovered at the most damaging moment possible. My parents agreed without hesitation, seeing it as necessary intervention rather than the devastating betrayal it actually was. The following weekend, Noah returned to Princeton with a specific mission. He'd cultivated a friendship with Jason, a graduate student in Dr. Miller's lab, by claiming interest in the program for after his business degree. "I'd love to see how real research is done," Noah told Jason. "My sister is always so secretive about her work." Jason, flattered by the attention and unaware of any ulterior motives, gave Noah a detailed tour of the lab when most students were away for Saturday activities. While Jason proudly explained equipment, Noah noted the location of my workstation, the shared lab computer I used, and the security protocols in place. "Madison mentioned she's working on her big presentation," Noah said casually. "She seemed stressed about it." "She shouldn't be," Jason replied. "Her work on the targeted delivery system is remarkable. Dr. Miller thinks it could lead to a publication." This innocent conversation gave Noah crucial information: the specific nature of my research focus and confirmation that the upcoming presentation was significant. Meanwhile, my mother contacted an old college friend who now worked in academic publishing, claiming she needed advice for a novel she was writing about academic misconduct. "I want to make sure the plagiarism scenario is realistic," she explained. "How exactly would someone insert plagiarized material in a way that would be irrefutably traced back to them?" Armed with expert advice, my parents and Noah refined their plan. They needed access to my actual research files, which I now kept, securely protected after the earlier incidents. The opportunity came when I least expected it. 3 days before my presentation, I received an urgent call from my mother. "Your grandmother has had a fall," she said, voice tight with what I now know was feigned concern. "She's asking for you, Madison. The doctors aren't sure how serious it is." My grandmother Elizabeth had practically raised me while my parents built their careers. The thought of her injured sent me into immediate panic. "I'll come right away," I said, already packing a small overnight bag. "Is she in the hospital?" "Yes, Westchester Medical. Your father will pick you up at the train station." I notified Dr. Miller and my professors, requesting a 24-hour absence. Everyone was understanding. I rushed to the train station without securing my research materials. The first critical mistake. In my hurry, I left my laptop in my dorm room, password protected but not encrypted. When I arrived at Westchester Medical, my grandmother was indeed there, for a scheduled checkup. She had experienced a minor dizzy spell days earlier, but was perfectly fine. She was surprised to see me burst into her examination room in a panic. "Madison? What on earth are you doing here, dear?" The confusion on her face confirmed what I was already beginning to suspect. I'd been deliberately misled. "Mom said you had a fall. That you were asking for me." My grandmother's brow furrowed. "I did no such thing. I'm just here for my regular blood pressure check. Your mother drove me." My mother appeared then, all innocent surprise. "Oh, did I overreact?" The nurse said something about a fall risk, and I just assumed, "I'm so sorry for the confusion." It was a masterful performance. I couldn't prove it was intentional, and arguing would make me seem irrational and uncaring. I spent the night at my grandmother's insistence, sleeping in my old bedroom while seething with suspicion. What I didn't know was that Noah had already flown back to Princeton and, using a key I didn't know he had entered my dorm room. He installed monitoring software on my laptop, copied my research files, and placed a USB drive with Victoria's research methodology in my desk drawer as backup evidence. That night, while I slept at my parents' house, Noah and my father worked methodically to alter my presentation and research notes. They didn't replace everything. That would be too obvious. Instead, they strategically inserted 3 paragraphs from an obscure research paper published in a specialized European journal, modifying them slightly but maintaining the distinct language and methodology. They also inserted a section that closely mirrored Victoria's unpublished work, which Noah had recorded during their casual conversation. The changes were subtle enough that I might not notice during a final review, especially when rushing, but obvious enough that a trained academic would immediately recognize the different writing style and approach. The next morning, my father drove me to the train station. "Good luck with your presentation tomorrow," he said as I got out of the car. "We're very proud of you." For a moment, I felt a rush of warmth. Despite their strange behavior, they were still my parents, and their approval meant something to me. That lingering emotional attachment blinded me to the magnitude of their betrayal. Back at Princeton, I had just 24 hours to finalize my presentation. I reviewed my slides, practiced my delivery, and checked my research notes. I noticed some formatting, inconsistencies, but attributed them to computer errors when transferring files. I fixed what I could and focused on being prepared for the biggest presentation of my undergraduate career. That night, my parents called to wish me luck. "You're going to do wonderfully," my mother said. "This is such an important day for you." "We wish we could be there," my father added. "But we'll be thinking of you." Noah texted, "Knock 'em dead, sis. Your hardest critic is rooting for you." Their supportive messages felt like a return to normalcy, reinforcing my desire to believe in their good intentions. I went to bed feeling confident and reconnected to my family. The morning of the presentation, I performed a final review of my materials. Something caught my eye, a paragraph that didn't quite sound like my writing. I started to investigate further, but was interrupted by a call from Dr. Miller, asking me to come to the auditorium early to test the projection system. "I'll fix it after the run-through," I told myself, closing my laptop and heading to the venue. That decision would cost me everything I'd worked for. The Princeton Molecular Innovation Symposium was held in Richardson Auditorium, a grand venue usually reserved for prestigious university events. As I entered that morning, the space was already buzzing with activity, technical staff adjusting, lighting, graduate students arranging programs, faculty members chatting in small groups. I spotted Dr. Miller near the stage, deep in conversation with Dr. Eliza Thompson, the department chair, and Dr. William Chen, Victoria's research advisor. A twinge of nervousness flickered through me. I hadn't expected Victoria's mentor to be present. "Ah, Madison," Dr. Miller called, waving me over. "Perfect timing. We're just finalizing the presentation order." I joined their small circle, clutching my laptop. "Good morning, professors. I'm ready whenever you need me." Dr. Thompson smiled warmly. "We've been looking forward to your presentation, Madison. Jonathan speaks very highly of your work." Dr. Chen nodded politely, but said nothing. I wondered if he resented me for securing the position Victoria had wanted. The technical check went smoothly, and I returned to a seat in the front row to make the final changes I'd noticed earlier. But before I could open the file, students and faculty began filing in, and Dr. Miller signaled that we were about to begin. The symposium opened with remarks from the dean, followed by 2 graduate student presentations. I was scheduled third, a prime spot that Dr. Miller had advocated for, believing my work deserved prominent attention. When my name was called, I approached the podium with confidence born of thorough preparation and genuine passion for my research. The audience of about 200 people looked expectantly as my opening slide appeared on the large screen. "Good morning," I began. "Today I'll be presenting our lab's recent advancements in targeted delivery mechanisms for gene therapy applications in rare genetic disorders." For the first 10 minutes, my presentation flowed perfectly. I explained our methodology, presented preliminary data, and outlined the potential clinical applications of our findings. The audience was engaged, with several professors nodding appreciatively at our novel approach. Then I reached the section on theoretical applications. The part I had noticed looked different during my hurried morning review. As I began explaining the slide, Dr. Chen suddenly straightened in his seat, his expression shifting from polite interest to intense focus. He leaned over to whisper something to Dr. Thompson, whose eyebrows shot up in response. I continued speaking, though a sense of unease began to grow. 2 slides later, Dr. Miller's posture changed too, his normally relaxed demeanor becoming rigid, eyes narrowing as he stared at the methodology I was describing. Just as I reached my conclusion, Dr. Chen raised his hand. This was unusual. Questions were typically held until after presentations. "Excuse me, Ms. Hayes," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the auditorium. "Could you go back to slide 16, please?" Confused but compliant, I clicked back to the specified slide. "This theoretical framework you're presenting," Dr. Chen continued, "is remarkably similar to unpublished work from Dr. Taylor's lab. In fact, the language is nearly identical to a draft paper my student Victoria Chen has been developing for the past 6 months." The room fell silent. My heart began pounding so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. "That's not possible," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "This is original research based on Dr. Miller's previous work and my own analysis." Dr. Miller stood now, his expression troubled. "Madison, can we see slide 22 again?" I clicked forward, hands shaking slightly. He studied the slide for a moment, then asked, "Are you familiar with Dr. Henrik Johansson's 2018 paper in the European Journal of Genetic Medicine?" "I've read it," I answered truthfully. It was part of my literature review. "This paragraph," Dr. Miller said, pointing to the screen, "is taken almost verbatim from that paper, without attribution." "That's impossible," I stammered. "I always cite my sources. There must be some mistake." But, as I looked more closely at the text highlighted on the screen, I realized with horror that he was right. The paragraph wasn't in my original draft. It had been inserted, along with 2 others I now noticed with growing panic. Dr. Thompson stood up. "I think we should adjourn this presentation pending further investigation. Madison, please gather your materials and come to my office immediately." The walk across campus to the department chair's office was the longest of my life. Dr. Miller and Dr. Thompson flanked me like guards, while Dr. Chen followed a few paces behind, already on his phone, undoubtedly calling Victoria. In Dr. Thompson's office, they asked for my laptop and research notes. As they examined my files, I tried desperately to explain that something was wrong, that I would never plagiarize. The text must have been altered, I insisted. I've been having strange issues with my files recently. Madison, Dr. Miller said, gently. These sections are fully integrated into your presentation and notes. They're not simple cut-and-paste jobs. They've been carefully woven into your work. Someone must have accessed my computer, I said, growing desperate. Please, you have to believe me. Dr. Thompson sighed. We've received an anonymous ethics complaint about your work yesterday, with specific citations of the sources you allegedly plagiarized. The complaint included screenshots of your drafts showing the plagiarized content. Anonymous? I echoed. Who would? A knock interrupted us. Dr. Thompson's assistant entered with a printout. This just came in. The student requested anonymity, but given the seriousness of the allegations, the ethics committee felt you should know. Dr. Thompson scanned the document, her expression grave. The complaint was filed by your brother, Noah Hayes. He claims he discovered the plagiarism when helping you proofread your work. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Noah hadn't helped me proofread anything. He hadn't even seen my final presentation. That's a lie, I whispered, my voice breaking. Noah never reviewed my work. He provided detailed emails showing your correspondence and requests for his help, Dr. Thompson continued. And he expressed deep regret at having to report his own sister. I felt the room spinning. This was a carefully orchestrated setup, but I couldn't prove it. Every defense I offered sounded like desperate excuses. The university moved with surprising speed. By that afternoon, I was notified of an academic misconduct hearing scheduled for the following day. No time to gather evidence or build a defense. No opportunity to properly investigate what had happened to my files. That evening, my parents arrived on campus, having been notified of the situation by Noah. Their performance was Oscar-worthy. How could you do something so foolish? My mother cried in my dorm room, loud enough for my roommate to hear through the thin walls. We raised you better than this. The pressure must have gotten to her, my father told Dr. Thompson during their private meeting. Madison has always been obsessed with achievement. We worried about her methods sometimes. By the time the hearing convened, the narrative was firmly established. I was a promising student who had cracked under pressure and resorted to plagiarism to maintain my stellar reputation. The academic integrity panel consisted of 3 professors and 2 student representatives. Evidence was presented methodically: my plagiarized presentation, my research notes containing similar unauthorized material, and the anonymous complaint with its detailed timeline. Then came the character witnesses, my own family, called to speak about their concerns regarding my academic habits. Madison has always been intensely competitive, my mother testified, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. When Noah began struggling academically in high school, she became even more determined to outshine him. Nothing was ever enough. My father described finding me in tears after receiving an A on a high school chemistry test. She said her future was ruined over an A. We worried about this perfectionism, but never imagined it would lead to something like this. Noah's testimony was the final nail in my coffin. He described how I had sent him my presentation to review, how he had noticed similarities to articles he'd read while researching grad schools, and how I had dismissed his concerns. I didn't want to turn in my own sister, he said, voice cracking convincingly. But I couldn't be complicit in academic fraud. The integrity of research is too important. Through it all, I sat in stunned silence. Their lies were so seamlessly integrated with truths that I couldn't effectively counter them. Every defense I attempted was undermined by evidence my family had carefully planted. When the panel asked about previous academic misconduct, Noah produced evidence I'd never seen before. A high school essay with plagiarized passages he claimed I'd confessed to him about. My parents nodded solemnly, confirming they'd dealt with the situation privately to protect Madison's future. None of it was true, but all of it was believable. My academic record was too perfect, my achievements too numerous. The panel saw what my family wanted them to see, an overachiever who had finally crossed an ethical line. The verdict came swiftly: immediate expulsion from Princeton University, revocation of my scholarship, and a permanent mark on my academic record. The Oxford opportunity vanished instantly. Dr. Miller, who had initially defended me, now looked at me with profound disappointment. "I believed in you, Madison," he said quietly as I gathered my belongings. "That's what hurts the most." As I walked out of the hearing room, my entire future in ruins, I caught sight of my parents and Noah in the hallway. For just a moment, as no one else was looking, Noah's facade slipped. He smirked, a small, satisfied smile that confirmed everything. This had been deliberate. This had been planned. This had been their goal all along. I had never felt so utterly betrayed and alone. The day after my expulsion, I received an official letter. I had 48 hours to vacate university housing. My campus ID was deactivated, cutting off access to buildings, meal services, and even the library. 3 years of my life had been erased in a single day. Standing in my half-packed dorm room, I received a call from my father. "Your mother and I have discussed the situation," he said, his voice eerily calm. "We're willing to help you through this difficult time, under certain conditions." Those conditions revealed their true intentions. I would move back home, enroll in a local community college of their choosing, and work part-time at my mother's design firm. All my educational and financial decisions would require their approval. In essence, I would surrender the independence they had worked so methodically to destroy. "This is for your own good, Madison," my mother added, having clearly been listening on another extension. "You've proven you can't be trusted with important decisions." The audacity of their offer, presented as generosity when they had orchestrated my downfall, sparked something in me. Through tears of rage and despair, I found my voice. "I know what you did," I said, the words steady despite my shaking hands. "All 3 of you. This was planned, and I will never, ever live under your roof again." I hung up and blocked their numbers, my first act of defiance. With nowhere to go and limited savings, I packed my belongings into 2 suitcases and a backpack. My roommate, believing the plagiarism accusations, barely spoke to me. Former friends avoided eye contact in hallways. The community I'd built over 3 years disintegrated overnight. On my last morning at Princeton, I ran into Dr. Miller outside the science building. I expected anger or disappointment, but instead saw uncertainty in his eyes. "The evidence was compelling, Madison," he said quietly. "But something doesn't add up. Your work has always been meticulously original." A flicker of hope rose within. "Me?" "It wasn't me, Dr. Miller. I was set up. My family." He held up a hand, stopping me. "I can't get involved in family matters, but I want you to know that despite everything, I believe you have extraordinary potential. Don't let this define your entire future." His words were both comfort and torture, acknowledgement of my abilities coupled with acceptance of my disgrace. I left Princeton with no destination in mind. My first night away, I stayed in a cheap motel near Trenton, New Jersey, using the last of my meal plan refund money. I applied for jobs online until 3 a.m., desperate for anything that would keep me from homelessness. After 3 days of rejections, I secured a position as a night shift receptionist at a small airport hotel. The pay was minimal, but it came with a heavily discounted staff room, a tiny space in the basement level with no windows, but it was shelter. For weeks, I applied to other universities, hoping my stellar record before the plagiarism incident might convince someone to take a chance on me. Each rejection letter cited my expulsion for academic misconduct. Princeton's prestige, once my greatest advantage, now made my disgrace more noteworthy. 2 months into my exile, Noah texted from a new number I hadn't blocked. Just checking in. Parents are worried. You're being dramatic. We only wanted what's best for you. Oxford would have been a mistake. I didn't respond, but the message confirmed what I already knew. My destruction had been deliberate, designed to bring me back under their control. The fact that they still believed I might return showed how little they understood me, or perhaps how successful they'd been at breaking me in the past. Financial hardship became my daily reality. My hotel job barely covered my reduced-rate room. And basic necessities. My credit card debt grew as I paid for essentials and job application fees. Without a college degree, my employment options were severely limited. I tried reaching out to former professors for research assistant positions, carefully explaining my situation without sounding paranoid. Most never replied. Those who did expressed regret, but couldn't risk their reputations by hiring someone expelled for plagiarism. 6 months after my expulsion, I hit a new low. The hotel was cutting staff, and I was among the first let go. With only 2 weeks severance and nowhere to go, I spent nights in my car, parked behind a 24-hour laundromat where I could use the bathroom and occasionally shower in a nearby gym, using a trial membership. During this time, I discovered something that nearly destroyed my remaining will to fight. While searching for job listings, I stumbled across an article in a scientific journal. Novel Approaches to Targeted Gene Therapy Delivery Systems by Robert Patterson, Noah Hayes, and Victoria Chen. The article detailed the very research I had been developing, my ideas, my methods, with just enough modifications to avoid direct plagiarism. My father had used his connections in academic publishing, Noah had contributed his surface-level understanding of my work, and Victoria had provided the scientific legitimacy. They had not only destroyed my academic career, but had stolen my intellectual property. While I was sleeping in my car, they were receiving recognition for my ideas. That night, sitting in my cold car with rain drumming on the roof, I contemplated giving up completely. What was the point of fighting when the system had so thoroughly failed me? When my own family had orchestrated my destruction for their benefit? I drafted a letter exposing everything, the setup, the theft of my research, the family conspiracy. But who would believe me? I was the disgraced student. They were respected academics and professionals. Without evidence, my accusations would sound like the bitter ramblings of a failed student unable to accept responsibility. The next morning, exhausted and hopeless, I was nursing a lukewarm coffee in a diner when someone slid into the booth across from me. "Madison Hayes? I've been looking for you." I looked up to see Professor Ellis, who had served on the academic integrity panel that expelled me. My first instinct was to leave, but curiosity kept me seated. "Why would you be looking for me?" I asked, voice hoarse from crying the night before. "Because things aren't adding up," she said quietly. "I've been reviewing your case. The evidence was compelling. Too compelling, actually. Too neat. Too comprehensive. For the first time in months, someone was seeing what I had been unable to prove. Dr. Miller has been raising questions too," she continued. "And then I saw the Patterson-Hayes-Chen paper. The methodological approach is remarkably similar to what you were developing, despite their claims of originality." "They stole my research," I whispered. "After they destroyed my reputation so no one would believe me." Professor Ellis didn't immediately dismiss my claim as paranoia, which alone felt like a miracle. "I can't officially reopen your case without new evidence," she said. "But I have a colleague at Mercer Biomedical Research who needs a lab assistant. No college degree required, just practical skills and discretion. It's not glamorous and doesn't pay much, but it would get you back into a laboratory environment." She slid a business card across the table. "Dr. Samantha Wright. Tell her I sent you. She doesn't care about academic politics, only capability." That small act of faith, a veteran professor believing in me despite official condemnation, became the turning point I desperately needed. For the first time since my expulsion, I felt a flicker of hope that my life wasn't permanently destroyed. As I left the diner clutching Dr. Wright's contact information, I didn't know it yet, but this moment marked the beginning of my journey, back from rock bottom. The path would be longer and harder than I could imagine, but at least now there was a path. The address on Professor Ellis's card led me to an inconspicuous building in an industrial area outside Trenton. Mercer Biomedical Research occupied the second floor, a modest facility compared to Princeton's gleaming laboratories, but equipped with functional research equipment. Dr. Samantha Wright was nothing like I expected. In her late 50s, with short gray hair and wearing jeans under her lab coat, she had a directness I found immediately refreshing. "Ellis says you were railroaded," she said after I introduced myself. "I don't care. What I care about is whether you can analyze genetic sequences, maintain precise experimental protocols, and work 80 hours a week for barely livable pay. I can do all of that," I said without hesitation. "Good. You start tomorrow. There's an efficiency apartment above the lab that comes with the job. Previous assistant left last month, so it's available if you need housing." The apartment was little, more than a studio with a kitchenette. But after sleeping in my car, it felt like luxury. That night, for the first time in months, I slept on a real bed, with a door I could lock and a sense of purpose to wake up to. Working for Dr. Wright was demanding but transformative. Mercer Biomedical operated on limited grant funding, conducting contract research for smaller pharmaceutical companies that couldn't afford in-house labs. The work was routine: testing drug interactions, running standardized experiments, documenting results. But it kept my scientific skills sharp. "You're overqualified," Dr. Wright commented after my first month. "Ellis mentioned you were working on targeted gene therapy delivery systems. Innovative stuff." I tensed, wondering if she'd seen the Patterson-Hayes-Chen paper. "I had some ideas," I said cautiously. "But that's in the past now." Dr. Wright studied me for a moment. "Nothing's ever truly in the past, Madison. Especially good ideas. They have a way of resurfacing when the time is right." Over the next 6 months, I rebuilt my life from scratch. I paid off my credit card debt, saved a small emergency fund, and even began taking online courses in computer science and data analytics, skills that would complement my scientific background without requiring academic credentials. Dr. Wright gave me increasing responsibility, eventually allowing me to design experimental protocols and analyze results independently. She never asked about Princeton or the plagiarism allegations, focusing instead on my present capabilities. One evening, working late, I found her reviewing the Patterson-Hayes-Chen paper. "Interesting approach," she said, not looking up, "but fundamentally flawed in the delivery mechanism. The lipid nanoparticle formulation they're proposing would be cleared by the immune system before reaching target tissues." She was right. It was precisely the problem I had been working to solve before my expulsion. My solution had involved a novel coding process that would disguise the nanoparticles from immune detection. "There's a way around that," I said tentatively. Dr. Wright glanced up. "Show me." That night, using the lab's basic equipment, I demonstrated the principles of my improved delivery system. Dr. Wright watched in silence, occasionally taking notes. "This is significantly more advanced than what's in this paper," she said finally, "and more likely to work." "It was my original research," I admitted. "They appropriated it." Dr. Wright's expression hardened. "I suspected as much. Ellis didn't give me details, but I can read between the lines." She tapped the journal thoughtfully. "You should develop this further, under a different application focus to avoid direct competition with their paper." "I can't publish," I reminded her. "My academic reputation is destroyed." "Publish under a pseudonym," she suggested. "Focus on practical applications rather than theoretical frameworks. There are industry journals that care more about results than academic credentials." That conversation sparked a new phase in my recovery. By day, I performed my regular lab duties. By night, I refined my research, adapting my delivery system for specific applications in treating rare genetic disorders. Dr. Wright introduced me to Dr. Michael Brennan, a former colleague who now worked in healthcare technology. He was developing medical applications, but struggling with the biological interface components. Your nanoparticle delivery system could be adapted for localized drug delivery via smartphone-controlled implants, he explained during our first meeting. The medical applications would be revolutionary, especially for conditions requiring precision timing of medication release. This collaboration opened an unexpected path. My biological expertise combined with Dr. Brennan's technical knowledge created something neither of us could have developed alone. A smartphone application that could monitor genetic markers via wearable sensors and calibrate treatment protocols accordingly. To protect my identity and avoid attention from my family, I worked under the pseudonym Madeline Harrison. Dr. Wright and Dr. Brennan respected my need for anonymity, though neither knew the full extent of my family's betrayal. After 18 months of development, our prototype health monitoring system attracted attention from a venture capital firm specializing in medical technology. Their initial investment allowed us to form a small company, Precision Health Solutions, with Dr. Brennan as CEO, Dr. Wright as Chief Scientific Officer, and me as lead research developer. For the first time since my expulsion, I felt professionally validated. My ideas were being recognized, not stolen. My work was making a difference, not becoming someone else's acclaim. As our company grew, so did my confidence. I rented a small but comfortable apartment in Philadelphia, bought professional clothing, and began carefully rebuilding my identity, not as Madison Hayes, disgraced student, but as Madeline Harrison, innovative biotech researcher. 2 years after my expulsion, Precision Health Solutions secured a major investment round of $15 million. Our app had shown promising results in clinical trials for diabetes management, and we were expanding into other chronic conditions. I was named Chief Innovation Officer, with a salary that finally reflected my contributions. During this period of professional growth, I also undertook a personal mission, uncovering the full extent of my family's conspiracy. Using my new financial resources, I hired a cybersecurity expert to analyze my old laptop, which I had kept in storage. There's definitive evidence of remote access during the period in question, the expert confirmed. Sophisticated enough to avoid casual detection, but not impossible to trace. The intrusions originated from 2 IP addresses, one registered to a Noah Hayes in Cornell University housing, another to Robert Hayes in Westchester County. I also engaged a private investigator to document interactions between my family and Victoria Chen. He uncovered a paper trail of emails, financial transactions, and meetings that painted a clear picture of conspiracy. Your brother transferred $5,000 to Victoria Chen 3 days after your expulsion, the investigator reported. And your father's firm began managing investments for the Chen family the following month. The connections are unmistakable. Armed with this evidence, I consulted an attorney specializing in academic misconduct cases. Her assessment was sobering. You have compelling evidence of sabotage and conspiracy, she acknowledged. But academic reinstatement cases are extraordinarily difficult, especially after this much time has passed. The university would fight vigorously to avoid admitting such a significant error in judgment. I decided to bide my time. Precision Health Solutions was growing rapidly, and each success strengthened my position. I was no longer desperate for vindication. I was building something more valuable than the career that had been stolen from me. 3 years after my expulsion, our company made headlines when our technology was featured in a major medical journal. The article praised our innovative approach to personalized medicine and highlighted the potential to revolutionize treatment for rare genetic disorders. 1 week after publication, I received an email from Dr. Miller. I saw the article on Precision Health's technology. The approach to nanoparticle delivery is remarkably similar to what you were developing at Princeton. I always wondered what happened to your research. Would you be willing to meet to discuss this remarkable coincidence? She. Email was addressed to Madeline Harrison, but it was clear he had made the connection. I agreed to meet him at a conference in Boston the following month. Our reunion was awkward but ultimately healing. Dr. Miller admitted he had harbored doubts about my guilt for years, but had lacked the evidence to challenge the university's decision. The Mao Patterson-Hayes-Chen paper raised red flags immediately, he told me. The methodological approach was clearly your work, but the execution lacked your precision. It's produced no significant follow-up research because the fundamental delivery problem remains unsolved, the problem you were on the verge of solving. I showed him our company's technology, explaining how I had adapted my original research into a practical application. His validation of my work, recognition that these were indeed my ideas, meant more than I could express. As we parted, Dr. Miller made an unexpected offer. If you ever want to clear your name officially, I would support a reinvestigation of your case. The evidence you've gathered, combined with your subsequent work, presents a compelling argument for academic sabotage. I thanked him but explained that my priorities had changed. My focus was building my company and developing technologies that helped people, not fighting old battles. What I didn't tell him was that I was waiting for the perfect moment, when my family would have no choice but to face what they had done. That moment was approaching faster than I anticipated. 4 years after my expulsion, Precision Health Solutions was valued at over $200 million. As Chief Innovation Officer and a significant shareholder, I had achieved financial success beyond anything I could have anticipated during those dark days living in my car. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, I received an email that sent a chill through me despite the years of preparation. Dear Madison, I hope this finds you well. Your father's investment firm has experienced significant losses, and we're facing difficult times. We've been trying to reach you for years. We're your family, and despite past disagreements, families should stand together in times of need. Please, contact us. Love, Mom. They had found me, and as I had always known they would, they had come crawling back when they needed something. The timing couldn't have been more perfect for the reckoning I had patiently awaited. I let my mother's email sit unanswered for 3 days, giving them time to wonder whether I'd received it or simply deleted it unread. Finally, I replied with clinical precision. I'm available to meet at my office in Philadelphia next Tuesday, at 10 a.m. The address is attached. Come alone, all 3 of you. This is not negotiable. My assistant, Leah, was briefed on their arrival. They're not family, I explained. They're former associates who may attempt to manipulate the situation. Don't leave them alone with any company materials, and record all interactions in the lobby. The morning of the meeting, I dressed deliberately, a tailored charcoal suit that projected authority, not a hint of the vulnerable student they had destroyed. I arranged my office strategically, 3 visitor chairs facing my desk, a digital screen on the wall, and a manila envelope placed prominently on my desk. At precisely 10:02 a.m., Leah announced their arrival. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and prepared to face the architects of my downfall. They entered cautiously, my father first, thinner than I remembered, and notably less confident. My mother followed, her practiced smile failing to hide her apprehension. Noah came last, his expression a mixture of resentment and calculation. Madison, my mother breathed, stepping forward with arms extended for an embrace. I remained seated. Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Hayes, Noah, please sit down. The formality stopped her cold. They exchanged glances and took their seats, suddenly unsure of the script they had undoubtedly rehearsed. You look well, my father began awkwardly. We've been so worried about you. Have you? I replied, my voice level. How interesting. Let's skip the pretense. You're here because you need something from me. What is it? My directness unbalanced them. After a moment's hesitation, my father cleared his throat. As your mother mentioned in her email, my investment firm has experienced significant Challenges. A major client lawsuit combined with market downturns has placed us in a difficult position. We might lose the house, my mother added dramatically. Everything we've worked for. And you believe this concerns me because I let the question hang in the air. Noah shifted impatiently. Look, we know you're doing well with your tech company. The business news has covered your success. We're talking about family here, Madison, despite whatever grievances you're holding on to. Grievances, I repeated, the word like acid on my tongue. I pressed a button on my desk, and the screen on the wall illuminated with a simple timeline. Let's discuss grievances, shall we? The timeline detailed every event from my Oxford acceptance through the plagiarism setup, my expulsion, and the publication of my stolen research. Each entry was accompanied by documented evidence, emails, access logs, financial transactions, and witness statements I had methodically collected over 4 years. This is absurd, my father sputtered, but his face had paled. Is it? I picked up a remote and clicked to the next screen. Here's the remote access log showing Noah's entry to my computer the night before my presentation. Here's the $5,000 transfer from Noah to Victoria Chen 3 days after my expulsion. Here's Dad's email to the journal editor fast-tracking the publication of research that wasn't yours to publish. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. Madison, whatever you think happened, what I know happened, I corrected. I have signed statements from Dr. Miller questioning the authenticity of the Patterson-Hayes-Chen paper. I have forensic analysis of my laptop showing precisely when and how the plagiarized content was inserted. I have Victoria Chen's recent deposition admitting her role in the scheme in exchange for immunity. This last claim was an exaggeration. Victoria hadn't actually provided a deposition. But the flash of panic across Noah's face confirmed it was an effective one. What do you want? My father asked, his voice hoarse. Money? Is that what this is about? I laughed, a short, incredulous sound. I'm worth considerably more than you are at this point, Mr. Hayes. What I want is accountability. I opened the manila envelope and removed 3 documents, sliding one to each of them. These are formal statements admitting your roles in the conspiracy to sabotage my academic career and steal my research. You will sign them, and they will be notarized today. Copies will go to Princeton University, the journal that published my stolen research, and into a secure location that will be automatically released to media outlets if any of you ever attempt to contact me again without explicit invitation. This is blackmail, Noah hissed. This is justice, I corrected. You destroyed my academic career. You stole years of my life. You watched me fall into homelessness and poverty, and you did it for control, for jealousy, for your own advancement. Now you'll acknowledge what you did. And if we refuse? My father challenged, though his bluster was clearly hollow. I smiled slightly. Then I'll proceed with the lawsuit my attorneys have prepared against all 3 of you, plus Victoria Chen and her father, for conspiracy, fraud, defamation, and intellectual property theft. The evidence will become public record. Your remaining clients will abandon your firm. Noah's business career will be over before it properly begins. And any financial problems you're experiencing now will seem trivial by comparison. The room fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. You would do that to your own family? My mother whispered. You forfeited the right to call yourselves my family the day you decided to destroy my life, I replied evenly. I'm giving you an opportunity to make a private admission rather than face public humiliation. The choice is yours. My father was the first to reach for a pen, recognizing the inevitable. Noah resisted longer, his face contorted with the same entitled rage that had driven him to betray me in the first place. You think this makes you better than us? He spat as he finally signed. No, Noah. What makes me better is that I rebuilt my life through legitimate work and innovation, not by destroying others. I succeeded despite what you did. Not because of what I took from someone else. After they signed, a notary was called to witness the documents. Throughout the process, my parents attempted various emotional appeals. Reminiscences about my childhood, expressions of regret about how things turned out, suggestions that we could heal as a family. I remained unmoved. Once the documents were officially notarized, I had copies made for each of them. Princeton University will receive these tomorrow. I expect they'll contact you directly about the implications. The journal will retract the fraudulent paper. Whether they pursue further action against you is their decision. And what about us? Your family? My mother asked, clutching her purse with white knuckles. You made your choice years ago, I said simply. Now you'll live with the consequences, just as I had to. The difference is, you'll do it with your comfortable house and social connections, not sleeping in a car behind a laundromat. As security esco after they left, I sat alone in my office, experiencing not the satisfaction I had anticipated, but a quiet sense of closure. The confrontation hadn't been about revenge, it had been about truth, about ensuring that the narrative of my life wasn't written by those who had tried to destroy it. The following week, Princeton University contacted me regarding the new evidence. An internal investigation was launched, resulting in the official clearing of my academic record 6 months later. The journal published a retraction and apology for the Patterson-Hayes-Chen paper. I declined the university's offer to resume my studies. Instead, I established a scholarship fund for students facing unjust academic accusations, providing both financial support and legal resources to ensure due process. Dr. Miller and I co-authored a legitimate paper on my original research, properly, crediting my contributions and establishing the scientific record I had been denied years earlier. As for my family, I maintained the boundaries I had established. They attempted contact several times in the months following our confrontation, oscillating between anger, guilt-tripping, and pleading. Each message was met with silence. Eventually, they stopped trying. 3 years after our confrontation, I received word that my father's firm had declared bankruptcy. Noah had relocated to Seattle for a mid-level management position far below his ambitions. My mother had sold the Westchester house and moved to a condominium in Florida. I felt no joy at their downfall, nor any obligation to help. Their collapse hadn't been my doing. It had been the natural consequence of building success on deception and betrayal, rather than genuine achievement. My own journey continued to evolve. Precision Health Solutions expanded internationally, our technologies helping thousands of patients with genetic conditions. I established a foundation supporting educational opportunities for students from disadvantaged backgrounds, particularly those interested in biomedical research. The deepest lesson from my experience wasn't about revenge or even justice. It was the recognition that true strength comes not from destroying others or controlling circumstances, but from maintaining integrity even when everything is taken from you. Family isn't defined by biology or shared history. It's created through trust, support, and mutual respect. In the years since my expulsion, I had built a chosen family of colleagues, friends, and mentors who valued me for my contributions and character, not for what they could take or control. The betrayal that once defined my life had become merely one chapter in a much larger story, a painful but ultimately transformative experience that shaped but no longer limited me. Today, when I look back at that terrified girl sleeping in her car, I feel immense compassion for her pain, but also pride in her resilience. She didn't know it then, but her darkest moment was merely the beginning of a journey toward a life more authentic and meaningful than the one that had been stolen from her. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you rebuild yourself afterward? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey of resilience and redemption resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming life's most challenging moments. Remember, your worth isn't determined by those who try to break you, but by your courage to rebuild what's been shattered. Thank you for listening, and may you find strength in your own difficult chapters. Ted them from my office. My father turned back. We only wanted what was best for you, Madison. Oxford would have taken you away from us. No, I replied. You wanted what was best for yourselves. There's a difference.